All right. YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I had a podcast scheduled this morning, but sometimes they cancel. Sometimes they have to reschedule for whatever reasons. We're dealing with busy people in the industry. This one was going to be a good one. It was going to be a CRO insider take on the state of the industry. This is a boutique CRO owner, and we'll reschedule. We're definitely going to do that one again. But I figured, you know what? Whenever something like that gets rescheduled, gets postponed, uh, I can just jump on and do a quick live stream. So let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you, Viva Life Sciences, for sponsoring the podcast. But, I'm not sure of this live stream. Not every live stream makes the podcast. Um, but it depends on if I'm interviewing someone or if the topics are good, whether it's going to go on the podcast. So if you also want to join me today, message me on LinkedIn and I will send you a link. Let me actually put that in the banner. I thought it was good to get started with a discussion on study startup. If you want to join me live, message me on LinkedIn. Here we go. Let's get this. Wait, let's figure out how to scroll. Here we go. All right. If you want to message me live, if you want to join me live, message me on LinkedIn. Study startup. I'm in the middle of it. I'm actually going to go to hello, Alexander. How's it going? Starting a boutique CRO. Well, if you want to come on, message me on LinkedIn. There are opportunities there, but it's also CRO is probably the most difficult type of company to start. Thank you, Rajat, watching from India. Kashel from Ontario, Canada. How's it going? New Jersey. What is the hierarchy for CRA upgrade? So the hierarchy to get to CRA is either from a site level, which is I think they make the best CRAs, or from internally at a CRO like remote site monitor, um, trial master file specialist, in-house study startup specialist. I really think study startup is underrated, which is one of the reasons why I want to do study startup, like a topic on study startup. Because right after this live, I'm going to the clinic. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to the clinic, and we're going to be doing study startup stuff because the industry's super busy. This is like a spillover from last year. I actually see more studies. I know I sound like a broken record, but every year since 2019, there's been more studies the following year than the year before. And so 2022 was a record year for number of clinical trials. A lot of those studies are still going on in 2023, and there's still a bunch of studies in study startup. I'm working on three right now in study startup, soon to be a fourth, maybe even a fifth. So sponsors understand sites are busy. They're giving incentives now. In one of my contracts, I have an incentive. If I get study startup done by a certain date, they give us a bonus, like as part of the startup. So definitely works. Sponsors and CROs, if you want to incentivize sites to get their study startup done quicker, those incentives do work. I'm going to the clinic today. We put that study as a priority. It's also relatively easy for us because we don't have that many sub-Is on that study, but there is an IRB application that we've got to do. There are financial disclosure forms. There's a 1572. Luckily for us, we use eReg, Viva. We use Creo for the eSource. So we have everything digital. And This sponsor accepts electronic signatures. Really, they all should, but this one does. They actually preemptively said if you're using e-reg and e-signatures, just give us your SOPs for that. So it's going to be relatively simple. I think we can get our study startup done today, honestly. And we're actually going to do study startup for 2 studies today. We have one that's done. It's just a few things missing, like some vendor trainings, which, by the way, those vendor trainings, vendor management for a site, the only benefit for academic medical centers that I see, besides their key opinion leaders and the fact that investors, let's face it, a lot of these, especially the smaller biotech companies, when they add an academic medical center as one of the sites for their study, investors love it because investors, AMCs have brand recognition. So investors see like Stanford University participating in this study or UCLA. They love it. But in reality, like we all know, nothing against those particular AMCs, but we all know that the real work is done with the small sites. Like the heavy lifting is done with the small sites. But the AMCs do have several advantages, the 2 that I mentioned. And the other one is they often have a lot of these like vendors that the smaller sites don't really have. They have them on site. So they have like imaging facilities for x-rays, MRIs on site. They have lumbar puncture. My PI told me, we just signed a new PI who's a neurologist and a psychiatrist. My new PI just told me that we actually have lumbar puncture on site. So that's the first time I've been doing CNS since 2005, central nervous system disorder studies. It's the first time we actually have that capability on site. So AMCs do have a lot of advantages, but you know, it's up to a sponsor and CRO to choose and to balance off those pros and cons. And this is what I would have discussed with the CRO startup. She's actually not a startup, but she's a boutique CRO, and they always have interesting takes on site selection and how they balance AMCs with community clinics. Who else is here? Mayoa, how's it going? Greetings from Houston. Good morning. What type of studies can an internal medicine, family medicine, primary care, or general practice doctor work as a PI? Any particular therapeutic areas to look for? They're unique because they can do a lot. So it just depends on the sponsor. Now, theoretically, they see everything, right? In normal private practice setting, the community physician, whether they're internal medicine, family medicine, whatever you want to call it, they see everything first and then they refer to specialists. So sponsors like that because they have the patients and they have the volume too. And they have the connections with specialists. So let's use dermatology as an example. And I really think internal medicine, family medicine, primary care, general practice doctors are best to get started with if you're a new site. And even if you're an established site, let's say you started with a specialist, I think you should consider these kind of physicians as well because it opens you up to a wider variety of studies that you can do. So they can really do anything. My PI at Yuma Clinical Trials, my first PI is this internal medicine. And we have so far in a year and a half that we've been working with him, we've had a atopic dermatitis study. Matter of fact, that was his first. Those are usually reserved for dermatologists, but because they have the patient volume, they gave us that study if we had a dermatology sub-I. The next one was plaque psoriasis, same thing. The next one was osteoarthritis of the knee, which that's who they want. They want internal medicine doctors for that. Um, the next one was a diabetes study. That's what they want. The next one was another OA of the knee. The next one that we haven't started yet is obesity. That's the one that we're in startup mode. And then at the same time, my dermatologist, he got a rosacea study, an atopic derm study, and then my brand new PI, Psych Neuro, he's actually certified, specialized to do both. We just got a depression study awarded to us, and I'm hoping we get a mild, early onset Alzheimer's study. So general practice can do a lot. They can also do cardio stuff. Like we got offered a heart disease study, which we actually got turned down for, but not because of his specialty. We just got turned down because they had enough sites. And so far, that's the only study we actually got turned down for that I know of. Another one we had was a opioid addiction study, which we didn't get. I think the sponsor canceled that study, but they would have considered him for that. In that case, what was helpful was, besides the patient volume, was his subspecialty was pain and addiction medicine. So internal medicine, family medicine, primary care, they can do a lot. And it's not any particular therapeutic areas to look for. It's what the market gives you. So that's one of the things you got to consider, especially if you are in an area that's not underserved. If there are a lot of sites, competing sites in your area, you're not going to get the easy studies. Even if you're in a underserved area like mine, you're still not going to get the easy studies. And by the way, we can talk from a philosophical standpoint. There almost is no such thing as an easy study anymore. But that's another podcast. So we better get used to it. Sydney, how's it going? I want to do study startup as my next step. Look, I think it's so underrated. I think you got to learn. In this book, we have the basics of study startup. It sounds like it's a lot. It really is not that complicated, but it's not that complicated when you include essential documents. But when you start including vendor trainings and different portal trainings and all this other stuff, it adds up. It does compound because then the site has less and less control over the process because we're typically using vendors. Vikram, how's it going? Christopher Sim, how's it going? We need to do another podcast. Let's do it again. Um, Biospecimen, yeah, there's those kind of studies too. You can actually get a lot of those kind of studies, like if you're a research naive PI. Brandon, how's it going? You can get a lot of those. Rajat, do you clinical data management is switchable to CRAs? We're gonna we're hopefully launching a course soon on data management. I think we're like 1 or 2 months away. We'll start announcing it soon through my partnership with the Clinical Research Circle and the University of Clinical Research. I do think it's switchable. Um, I actually think it's easier to go from data management to CRA than the other way around. But I think both are switchable. Like that's a two-way street. It's not traditional. You don't see it a lot, but I have seen it, and there are people doing it. Signing up new trials. There seem to be a lot out. Yes, see, there are new trials out there. How will AI affect clinical trials? I love this question. So I did like a 1 minute TikTok or LinkedIn short, YouTube short, TikTok, Instagram on this. There's a bunch. I want to say there's like 60 or so AI startups that have already have partnerships with biotechs or pharma. I forget the name of the big one that just signed up with BioNTech, which is, if you know, Everybody, that's a household name by now because they're the ones that partnered with Pfizer on the COVID vaccine. So they signed with a Deep Mind. I don't think it was Deep Mind. I forgot the name of it. Anyways, there's like 50 or 60 or so AI companies that are in talks with partnering with biotech slash pharma or already are. Right now, the reason you're not hearing about it on our side of things, our side meaning actual clinical development, is because their utilization is in preclinical. So their utilization is in actually the drug discovery, like finding the molecules. When you think of the magnitude, right? This is what gets me excited about AI. A lot of people think AI is here to replace our jobs. Maybe, but I don't think so. When you think of the magnitude, 10 to the power of 60 or something crazy, some incomprehensible number. Small molecules that exist that we don't know yet, but we know they exist. Small molecules typically, I mean, this is like the foundation of medicine. Small molecule attaches to a protein, whether it's a receptor or a signaling molecule, and either turns it on or off or initiates a cascade. Like, this is the foundation of medicine as we know it. Combo therapy, too, when you talk about immunotherapy with oncology, there's multiple molecules involved. We don't, when we have that many small molecules and we don't know their applications, but we have an idea of the few that we already do know, AI can sort through, get through those binding properties, the chemical properties. They already know DeepMind. I think it was DeepMind that is either owned by Google or heavily invested by Google. I think AlphaFold was the name. They figured out through AI, based on the amino acid structure, how a protein will fold, which is initiating like a frenzy as far as looking at proteins and protein targets. So this kind of stuff, comparing what we already know to what we don't know, we could figure out chemical structures really easily, molecular signatures easier, and in theory, it should incentivize more clinical research. But it will also make a lot of things fail before they even get to clinical research. So before human studies is animal studies, before that it's computer models. And right now what they're doing is, or what they're going to start doing is a whole bunch of computer models. So I think it's really AI's positioning this industry for growth over the next decade or two. Insta deep, someone said. There's all kinds of these AI companies. So I'm bullish on it. How will they affect like monitoring and patient recruitment and things like that? I don't know. Those kind of things are a little less um, input output for AI. Like a lot of monitoring is human involvement. Like, how do I persuade my site to answer their query? How do I persuade my site to watch out for this potential deviation that's about to happen? How do I persuade my site that they're not enrolling to start enrolling? Those are more complicated. Those are humans. Humans still do that. It's not as simple as input output, even a complex input output. So how it will affect clinical trials, I don't know. I know digitization, so eSource, eReg, is going to allow for the simple monitoring to be done more passively. And I don't even know if I mean, what's the difference between AI and just advanced tech? They're kind of becoming the same thing. I like that tech is already taking over some aspects of making life easier for sites. So Viva is a perfect example. There's no AI that I'm aware of that Viva is using. Maybe there is, I don't know. But when sites put their regulatory documents in Site Vault, and then they check that they want to share it automatically with the sponsor's trial master file, right? Like that's tech that makes life easier for CRCs so that they can go do more studies. Apparently, there's a need for sites doing more studies. Um, Same thing with monitoring. If we start digitizing eSource, the SDV becomes a little bit easier. Source data verification. Source data review, a little more complicated, but possibly I could see it. But things like preemptively finding potential problem points. I mean, I know in the movie Minority Report they do that. They arrest people for future crimes. Will we be able to stop future deviations in a similar matter? I don't know. Like humans are doing that right now. So that's a good topic right there. How will AI affect clinical trials? Let's go through a few more. It's getting too late for anyone to join me now. That would have been good earlier if you messaged me that you want to join. Um, let's do it again. Let's plan one where we just have people on, like Brad Hightower did. Hi from Miami, Yini. Is it harder to become a clinical trial manager compared to a CRA for a sponsor? Yes, in the if CTM is in the traditional sense of the individual responsible for the outcomes of the individual responsible for the conduct of the trial, yes, because CTM, while they're not directly, not all of them are directly supervising the CRAs, they are the orchestrator of the study. So you have to have an understanding, usually, of how to be a CRA, ideally, how to be a coordinator. I did interview someone recently who went from medical assistant. She got her bachelor's degree. She's working on her master's degree. She went from medical assistant to CRC to clinical trial manager. But that was for a startup company. That wasn't necessarily a traditional sponsor or a traditional CRO. It was more of one of these decentralized trial companies that grow fast. Um, so that's not. She definitely didn't take the traditional path, but as you can see, it's possible. So the traditional path you need is like CRC to CRA to then CTM. Even one step between CRA and CTM is like would be lead CRA. It's usually that's like a 5-year process, if not more. 5 years at the fastest. Just started as a clinical trial specialist for a sponsor, but wanted to transition to CRA after I saw the amount of responsibility a CTM has. Yeah, so CTM definitely more responsibility, more pressure. Not to say CRA is like easy. CRA travels a lot though. So you're sacrificing a lot in both positions. It just depends what you prefer. CRA, you get to go out with clinics, engage with clinics, even though you're not engaging with patients, you're still in clinical settings. You know, you go to hospitals, you go to sites, you interact with coordinators. You're still kind of involved in like clinical setting. You talk to doctors on a weekly basis, if not daily basis. So a lot of CRAs that are former nurses, they like that aspect. They feel like they're still involved in medicine. As a CTM, I mean, technically you're involved in medicine, but you're more of a project manager and a regulatory affairs specialist and working with sponsors on higher level things. So it just depends what you want. They're both hard. They both have stress, but Alexander says, I'm growing my practice in 2023. I prefer to build software rather than providing statistical services. I think this goes back to the difficulty of building a CRO. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, a lot are building software. Like, look at what these guys are doing, right? Viva. They started, and they still are. I mean, they're the industry giant for building software for sponsors. So, SUSARs, TrialMaster file systems, for sponsors. They monetize sponsors. They bill sponsors. Before that, they started to empower pharmaceutical sales reps. So again, selling software as a service for sponsors. Where the industry is at right now is getting sites to adopt tech, because most sponsors and CROs, they have tech solutions. The last domino to fall to initiate this cascade of full digitization are the sites. And the sites are really fragmented. The sites, there's a long tail of sites that do a lot of the clinical studies in this industry, similar to UMA clinical trials. Most of them haven't switched to eReg or eSource. Most of them won't even do it when it's free. Again, Viva, Site Vault, sites.viva.com, free electronic investigator site file. Free. And sites are still hesitant. Understandably so. There's a lot. That's one of the reasons why Viva sponsored me and Brad and a few others to get the word out, because even when something's free for sites is a tough market. So if you're selling or going to build software, you need to get very specific about what you're selling and to who. And if it's to sites, I think that's a losing proposition, because sites won't pay for things for the most part. We pay for Creo because it's eSource. And so far, there are not any free eSource vendors that I think are actually like good. Plus, Creo has eReg, they have CTMS, they have a financial component, which I actually use. They have a patient recruitment component. They have an e-consent. Viva has electronic site file for sites free. There's rumors. I mean, if you could read, I don't know, I have any insider info, but my educated guess is they're also headed towards more tools to empower sites for free. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough, software is tough. Anil, I will soon collaborate with DSCS. Yes, we get studies for sites all the time. Let me know. Actually, you know what, Anil? I'm gonna send this picture to Chris, because Chris gets very excited when potential sites find out about us through a live stream. Maybe this is a way to get him onto more live streams. So, yes, for the studies that you find for the sites, do you take a cut from the budget? No, no, we do not. I'm fundamentally opposed to that. The reason I started the site service is because it's the product I wanted when I started in research. Matter of fact, my site, Yuma Clinical Trials, is a client of DSCS. A lot of these studies I mentioned earlier are studies I got. Now, it's not without work. Like, we give you study leads. We also give you sometimes study leads that come from sponsors saying, "Hey, we need more sites." But it's the site owner or whomever's in charge at the site to follow up with these leads. We also have people on staff that help follow up with leads to find more targeted contacts and get more information. And we're always having contacts with CROs, sponsors. Matter of fact, the person I was supposed to interview today is a contact of ours at a CRO. So they're always looking for sites too. No cuts from the budget. We negotiate your budget for you, but you're the payee, you're the signer. We're nowhere on the contract. We negotiate it for you though, if you want. If you don't want us to, we won't, but the price is the same. It's all inclusive, $1,500 a month. So no. And if anybody takes a cut from your budget, think twice about why you're using them. Right? And read the fine print. Deep D, how's it going? It was nice doing our podcast. Is there a possible movement from senior CRC to clinical data manager? Yeah, of course. There is. Digitization of protocol is where it's at. Yeah. We're gonna have AIs writing protocols soon, if they're not already. That's an application where I see AI can immediately, and I think there already are. I think I interviewed a few companies where AI is already writing protocols. Not impossible to be CTM directly without CRA experience. Yeah, see, there's Deepti. She's a perfect example, CTM. Is it possible to have work-life balance as a CTM? I think so. I've never been a CTM. Deepti is the person. Contact her. She's on LinkedIn right there. The person I interviewed the other day, also Carrie. It's possible to have work-life balance in any role in research, but you got to work for it. If anyone's interested in hearing more about Creo, please reach out. Yeah, Creo is a great product. I love Creo. Interested in Creo eReg versus Florence binders. Yeah, Creo has everything. Like, it's obviously paid. I use both. I use Creo and Viva. Creo has eSource, CTMS. They have the eReg. Um, you pay for it, but I think it's a fair price. I think it's actually a good price. E-consent, they just rolled out. We just e-consented our first 2 patients. Relatively smooth. Um, very user friendly. Viva, it's used by all the sponsors on the back end of things. They're giving out free stuff. You know, eventually the industry will consolidate into like a few vendors for eSource, eReg, just like we have EDC consolidation, right? So it's based on preference, but Creo's awesome. I could vouch for Creo. Um, Work-life balance is a work in progress. You have to learn to draw the line and prioritize. Yep. So Stephanie, we should do an interview actually. Um, so anything else, guys? Study startup. I'm going back to the clinic right now. We have to take care of financial disclosure form for the PI and sub-I. We have to get the 1572 done for this particular study. We've got to get the IRB application going. We've got to probably protocol signature page, investigator brochure, acknowledgement, organize everything in the eReg, start creating the eSource. This is the study startup, and then we work on the contract. Um, we'll work on the contract for this new study we have, and make sure that, like for my new staff, from my 3 coordinators, only one has done IRB applications, so I want the other 2 to learn. So that's going to be something we're going to do today, plus a bunch of other stuff I have on the whiteboard that we got to work on. There's no patients in the office today, so we have a lot of time to catch up and follow up on vendors and their training and all that stuff. As a remote monitor, I definitely have it, meaning work-life balance, considering if it is worth it to advance into management positions if it becomes overwhelming. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, once you're in this industry, you can advance quickly, advance as far as responsibilities and pay. But a lot of people are realizing, hey, you know what? Do I really want that? Is it worth the trade-off? Because I'm kind of happy where I'm at. I have unlimited pay time off. Some of these positions have unlimited pay time off and less responsibility. A lot of people like that in the new economy. But anyways, like, subscribe, comment, share. I gotta get going. Catch y'all later, Guru Nation. Bye bye.